Hey everyone, ready to travel back in time with me?
Always up for a good time travel adventure.
Perfect, because this time we're heading to ancient Mesopotamia. Get ready to explore the legendary city of Babylon.
Ah, Babylon. A city steeped in history and shrouded in intrigue. Where do we even begin?
Well, you guys sent over some amazing excerpts from the Babylon Wikipedia page, so I figured, let's make that our guidebook.
Sounds like a plan. There's a lot to unpack there. Centuries of history, incredible innovations, epic power struggles.
It's every other sentence I'm like, wait, what? More drama than like the entire run of Game of Thrones?
I'd say it gives Game of Thrones a run for its money.
Right. So let's just get this out of the way. We've all heard of Babylon, right? Even if it's just those big name things.
The Hanging Gardens, the Tower of Babel.
Exactly. They're like cultural touchstones. But I have a feeling that most of us, and myself included here, don't really grasp how important the city truly was in the ancient world.
It's easy to get caught up in those iconic images, those almost mythical stories. But what we need to remember is that Babylon was a real place, a city that, for a time, stood at the very center of human civilization.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What did it actually look like to live in Babylon during its peak?
Imagine this, a city unlike anything the world had ever seen. A melting pot of cultures, a hub of trade and innovation.
I mean, we're talking thousands of years ago. Was it really that impressive?
Oh, it was mind-blowing for its time. Think about it. Twice in its history, Babylon held the title of the largest city on the entire planet.
Wow. Larger than anything else. And this is like way before skyscrapers and megacities.
Exactly. It was a testament to Babylon's economic and cultural dominance. And get this, historians believe it was likely one of the very first cities to hit a population of 200,000 people.
200,000, whoa. Like, I get overwhelmed just thinking about being in Times Square at New Year's.
Exactly. Imagine the bustling streets, the markets brimming with exotic goods, the sheer energy of a city that massive.
It's hard to wrap your head around, especially since, let's be real,
Yeah.
what we see today, those ruins, that's just a fraction of what was.
It's like piecing together a giant ancient puzzle. We have these tantalizing pieces, archaeological finds, crumbling texts, accounts from ancient historians who were blown away by Babylon's grandeur.
So much history, just waiting to be unearthed and understood.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying Babylon so captivating. With every new discovery, the picture becomes clearer, more vibrant. We're constantly learning more.
Okay, I gotta ask this before we go any further. The name Babylon itself,
What about it?
it just sounds so epic. Like you hear that name and you instantly think ancient empires, mysteries, intrigue.
It's a name that carries weight, doesn't it? Centuries of history, of triumphs and tragedies, all bound up in that one word.
Okay, so I was reading through the Wikipedia page, and get this, even the name Babylon is a bit of a mystery.
Ah, yes. The name itself is a bit of a historical puzzle.
It is, like you often hear it translated as the gate of the gods, right?
That's the common translation, yes. But many experts believe that's a later interpretation, a way for people to make sense of a name whose true meaning had been lost to time.
Oh, interesting. So it's like over centuries, the original meaning got a little, I don't know, muddled, like a game of telephone where the message changes a bit with each retelling.
Precisely. And that's where the work of linguistic detectives comes in.
Linguistic detectives, is that like a real thing?
Oh, very much so. They're like the Sherlock Holmes of language. They've been meticulously tracing the evolution of the name Babylon over time.
So what they find, what's the real story behind the name?
Well, they've uncovered some fascinating clues. We see shifts from earlier forms like Babila to the Akkadian Babilim. Each variation offers a glimpse into how the name was spoken, how it was influenced by different cultures over time.
It's amazing how these, like, seemingly small details, the way a word is pronounced, can offer such big insights into the past.
It's those tiny details that often tell the most compelling stories. They connect us to the people who came before us, to the ways their cultures intertwined and evolved.
It's mind-blowing, really. But let's get back to Babylon itself, because it wasn't always this grand imperial capital, right?
You're right, Babylon's story is one of ambition, of an almost Shakespearean rise to power. It started as a relatively modest city-state, just one among many competing for power in ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah, and Mesopotamia back then was basically like the hip, happening place to be. Everyone wanted a piece of the action.
Exactly, a real hotbed of civilizations. And it was in this, shall we say, dynamic environment that Babylon began to make a name for itself.
And it wasn't always smooth sailing, was it? I mean, according to the Wikipedia article, there were times when Babylon got knocked down, Pretty hard.
That's putting it mildly. Babylon's history is full of dramatic ups and downs, conquests, rebellions, near annihilation. But through it all, it always seemed to find a way to bounce back.
Talk about resilience. So what was it about Babylon that allowed it to become so successful? Was it just being in the right place at the right time?
Well, location certainly played a crucial role.
It's all about location, location, location,
You
really.
got it. Babylon was strategically positioned on the banks of the Euphrates River.
Ah, the Euphrates,
Yeah.
one of the cradles of civilization, right?
Exactly. And Babylon's position on this vital waterway meant it became a hub for trade, a crossroads for cultures and ideas.
So they were in a prime spot to basically control the flow of goods and knowledge.
Precisely. But it wasn't just about geography. Babylon needed the right leader, the right vision, to truly capitalize on its potential. And that's where a rather ambitious fellow named Sumuabum enters the scene.
Smuaboom. Now, there's a name you don't hear every day.
He wasn't afraid to make a statement, that's for sure. The Wikipedia article mentions how he boldly declared independence from the nearby city-state of Kazalu, basically saying Babylon's going places with or without you.
Talk about a power move. You got to admire that kind of gumption.
He laid the groundwork for Babylon's rise to prominence. But it was under the reign of Hammurabi that Babylon truly transformed into an empire.
Hammurabi. Now, he's a name even I recognize. He's the law code guy, right?
The one and only.
I remember learning about Hammurabi's code in school. It was like one of the first sets of written laws or something, right?
It wasn't the very first, no, but it was revolutionary in its scope and influence. And for Hammurabi, it was key to his grand vision for Babylon.
So he wasn't content with Babylon just being like a prosperous city-state. He wanted to build an empire.
Precisely. Hammurabi was ambitious. He saw an opportunity to make Babylon the dominant power in the region.
And I'm guessing his famous law code was a big part of that strategy.
Absolutely. Hammurabi's code wasn't just about settling disputes. It was about establishing order, projecting power, creating a legacy that would last for centuries.
And it worked, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Under Hammurabi, Babylon's influence expanded dramatically. It eclipsed even those ancient religious centers like Nippur, places that had held sway for centuries.
Wow. Talk about shaking things up. I mean, here's this, like, relatively new power on the scene, calling the shots, reshaping the political landscape.
And people noticed. Hammurabi's code sent ripples throughout the ancient world. It wasn't just about dictating the law. It was a statement about Babylon's power and ambition.
And that's how you build an empire, right? With a strong foundation and a leader with a vision.
Precisely. And Hammurabi's vision for Babylon, as we'll see, extended far beyond just laws and conquests. But that, my friend, is a story for another time. Empires, right? They don't usually get built by just being nice to your neighbors.
Yeah, like, hey, want to be part of my empire? Oh, sure, thanks for asking. No, definitely not how it usually went down back then.
Definitely not. And Babylon's story is chock full of drama, like enough plot twists and power struggles for a whole TV series.
Oh, yeah, the Wikipedia article lays it all out. Invasions, rebellions, empires clashing. Sounds like Babylon was always in the middle of some epic showdown.
It's almost like a pattern, you know? Destruction and then renewal, over and over again.
It's like every time you count Babylon out, they come back swinging.
And that's what makes this whole period so fascinating. Take the Assyrian king Sennacherib, for example.
Okay, I'm listening. This Sennacherib sounds intense.
Oh, he was. In 689 BC, he didn't just conquer Babylon, he basically tried to erase it.
Whoa, 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 hold up a sec. Erase it. Like, completely. Why would anyone do that?
It was a power play, plain and simple. Destroying a city, especially one as symbolically important as Babylon, it was the ultimate way to send a message.
Don't mess with me.
Exactly.
Right.
Sennacherib wanted everyone to know who was in charge. He wanted to crush any hope of rebellion to make Babylon an example.
Okay, so did it work? Did the rest of the ancient world just cower in fear?
You'd think so, right? But you know what they say about what doesn't kill you.
Makes you stronger.
Exactly. This might sound strange, but the destruction of Babylon, especially its temples, it backfired on Sennacherib.
How so?
People were outraged. They saw it as sacrilege. Instead of being afraid, they rallied. It was like this brutal act just fueled their desire to rebuild, to come back even stronger.
And that brings us to good old Nebuchadnezzar II, right?
You know it! Nebuchadnezzar was not about to let Babylon stay a pile of rubble.
This is where we get those iconic images of Babylon, right? The Ishtar Gate, all those amazing glazed bricks, and of course those legendary hanging gardens.
You got it! The reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, it was Babylon's time to shine again. He went all out, rebuilding on a grand scale.
Okay, we got to talk about these hanging gardens. Were they even real? Because, full disclosure, I've always kind of thought it was more of a legend.
Ah, the million-dollar question, weren't they?
Seriously, they were like one of the wonders of the ancient world. But even back then, people were like, wait, have you actually seen these gardens?
Right. We've got these accounts from ancient writers like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus. They describe these incredible tiered gardens filled with exotic plants and watered by some super advanced system.
Sounds pretty amazing.
It does, doesn't it? But here's the thing. These accounts were written centuries after Babylon's peak.
So you're saying maybe they'd heard the stories, but things got a little exaggerated along the way.
It's definitely possible. And here's the real head-scratcher. We haven't found any Babylonian texts that mention the Hanging Gardens directly.
Wait, really? Not a single mention. You'd think something that spectacular would at least be in like a shopping list or something.
Right. It's a bit of a mystery. Some scholars believe that maybe they were real, but they weren't actually in Babylon.
Wait, so where were they?
There's a theory that they were actually near Nineveh, which was the Assyrian capital.
So maybe the hanging gardens were more of a, I don't know, a bragging rights thing? Like the Assyrians were like, oh yeah, we got gardens, they're hanging. What of it?
Who knows? But it's a good story, isn't it?
It's a great story. Even if we don't know for sure if those gardens were real, what we do know is that Babylon was eventually conquered.
Indeed. And Babylon's conquest by Cyrus the Great in 539 BC, that's a whole other epic tale.
The Persians were a force to be reckoned with, weren't
Oh, absolutely. They'd conquered a huge chunk of the ancient world by that point. But Babylon, with its massive walls, it was like this ultimate challenge.
And Cyrus, he was no dummy. He knew he couldn't just like knock on the front door and be like, hey, we're here to take over.
Not a chance. Cyrus was known for his military cunning, and for Babylon, he came up with an absolutely audacious plan. He decided to divert the Euphrates River.
Wait, what? He diverted an entire river. How do you even begin to do that?
It was a massive undertaking, but Cyrus, he was all about thinking big. He knew that the Euphrates was key to Babylon's defenses.
Makes sense. A natural barrier.
Right, but it was also a vulnerability.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this.
Cyrus's engineers, they worked for weeks, maybe even months, to build this hidden canal, and then when the time was right, they unleashed it.
And just like that, the Euphrates was no more.
Not quite, no more.
Right.
They diverted the flow of the river, lowering the water level enough that Cyrus's troops could sneak in through the riverbed.
No way. Talk about being caught with your pants down.
The Babylonians, they never saw it coming. It was a brilliant tactical maneuver.
Talk about outsmarting your opponent. It's like something out of a movie.
It really is. And it worked. With the river no longer a barrier, Babylon's defenses crumbled, and the city fell to the Persians.
And just like that, another empire falls.
It's a reminder that no empire, no matter how powerful, lasts forever.
True that. So what happened next? I mean, after such a dramatic fall from grace, what becomes of Babylon?
You know, it's funny how we tend to think about these ancient empires like, once they fall, that's it, game over. But Babylon's story doesn't end there. Not even close.
So it wasn't just like hitting the reset button. Cyrus takes over, and that's that for Babylon.
Nope, not at all. Cyrus was actually known for being pretty tolerant, especially for a conqueror. Instead of burning Babylon to the ground, he made it part of the Persian Empire.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The Persians had a bit of a reputation for, like, incorporating the cultures they conquered.
They did. And Babylon, it actually continued to thrive under Persian rule, became a major center of learning and administration.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, the Babylonians, they weren't just great warriors. They were serially smart cookies.
Oh, absolutely. This was a society that had a deep understanding of astronomy, mathematics, map-making. They were light years ahead of their time.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. The knowledge and ideas that came out of Babylon, they ended up shaping an empire that stretched all the way from India to Greece.
It's a great example of how ideas can be just as powerful, if not more so, than military might. But we can't talk about Babylon's legacy without talking about its impact on, well, how we think about the world in a much broader sense.
You're talking about religion, right?
Exactly. Babylon plays a huge role in religious narratives, particularly in the Bible.
Right. The Tower of Babel. I mean, that story is basically about human ambition, and, let's be honest, maybe biting off a bit more than you can chew.
It's a powerful story, right? That
Yeah,
desire to reach for the heavens, to push boundaries, it's something that still resonates with us today.
totally. And then there's the Babylonian exile, a pivotal moment in Jewish history.
It's a period that really shaped Jewish identity, their faith, their relationship with power.
And it's all because of Babylon.
Right. It's incredible to see how this one city, Babylon, it's had such a lasting impact on how we view the world, even thousands of years later.
It's like the name itself, Babylon. It's more than just a place. It's this whole concept. It
Yeah.
represents both the heights of human achievement and, let's be real, some of our biggest mess-ups.
It's a reminder that history is never simple, right? It's full of contradictions, of beauty and brutality, of progress and, well, the opposite of progress.
And it's all there in the story of Babylon, which is why we're still so fascinated by it. I mean, you see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Paintings, movies, even video games. Babylon is like this never-ending source of inspiration.
It's true, and that's the power of a good story, I guess. It captures something essential about the human experience. And Babylon's story, it's got it all.
It does. Well, I gotta say, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but if I'm being honest, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
There's always more to discover, right? And that's part of the fun of studying history. It's like this never-ending puzzle.
Exactly. And I think that's a good place to wrap things up. But before we go, I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on this journey back in time to ancient Babylon. We hope you learned something new, maybe even had your mind blown a little bit wrong.
Because let's be real, Babylon was a wild ride.
It was. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire you to do some exploring of your own. There's a whole world of ancient history out there just waiting to be discovered. So, until next time, keep those curiosity gears turning, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.